Today's video will be focusing on one of the crucial aspects of Kripke's theory of proper name. I will delve into Kripke's account of identity statements that involve rigid designators as well as non-rigid designators. Kripke's account of rigid designator is that the designator which designates the same object across all the possible worlds is known as rigid designator. So Kripke is committed to the thesis that proper names are rigid designators. And non-rigid designators, on the contrary, are the designators that designate different objects in different possible worlds. Possible world means possible state of situation, counterfactual situation, as simple as that. So, for example, Benjamin Franklin is equal to the inventor of bifocals. This is the classic example that Kripke has been using in his lectures that we find in Naming and Necessity, in the book Naming and Necessity. Let's take another example because this sounds a bit stereotypical. Let's say Mr. Narendra Modi is equal to the Prime Minister, the present Prime Minister of India. Alright. So, Narendra Modi is a rigid designator, and this denotes the same individual across all the possible worlds. That is why it is rigid designator. Why? Because the proper name designate the same individual in all the possible, all the counterfactual situations. Very simple. But the another co-referential term, that is non-rigid designator, the present president or the present Prime Minister of India, this is not a rigid designator, this is non-rigid designator, because it designates different individual in different possible world. How? See, Narendra Modi could have been a scientist, he could have been a philosopher, or he might not have been into politics. So a lot of counterfactual situations we can imagine where Narendra Modi is not present Prime Minister of India. Okay, he might have been doing another thing than in politics. So another co-referential term, the present president, the present Prime Minister of India, is a non-rigid designator. So the whole identity statement, Mr. Narendra Modi is equal to the present Prime Minister of India. This identity statement is not necessary statement, is a contingent statement. Mark it. This is a contingent statement. Why? Because we can imagine such counterfactual situations where Mr. Narendra Modi might not have been the present Prime Minister of India. So it is not necessarily true. At least there might have been one possible world where Mr. Narendra Modi is not the Prime Minister of India. Someone else could have been the present Prime Minister of India. So that is why it is not necessarily true. In order for a statement to be necessarily true, it must be true across all the counterfactual situations. Alright, so I hope I made it clear why the statement, identity statement involving rigid as well as non-rigid designator is not a necessary true statement. Now, another important facet, some statement that I will be citing, identity statement of course, that are necessarily true, but provided there is a clause, provided the coreferential, both the coreferential terms are rigid designators. So first of all, let me clarify briefly what is an identity statement. Like M is equal to N. Okay, Mr. Narendra Modi is the present Prime Minister of India. Here is the copula is serving the purpose of identity, is equivalent to equal. Okay, so the term is, although it is ambiguous, but here it has been employed in the sense of equal, is equal to. Okay, like in mathematics we use the equal sign, like that. So identity statement, simply put, is a statement where two coreferential terms refer to one and the same individual. All right. Now again, coming back to the most important point that I am going to touch upon. So it is worthy to mention here that there could be such identity statements which are necessarily true, provided their coreferential terms are both rigid designator. For example, water is equal to H2O. Another example, 4 is equal to the square root of 16. Both the coreferential terms are rigid designator. 4 is a rigid designator because it designates the same entity across all the possible worlds and in all the counterfactual situations. And the square root of 16 refers to the same entity, same number whatsoever across all the counterfactual situations. That is why both the coreferential terms in the given identity statement are rigid designator, and because of that it makes the identity statement necessarily true. I hope you get it. So we have discussed identity statements, two types of identity statements. One that involves rigid as well as non-rigid designator. Two that involves only the rigid designators. Now Kripke would like to defend his thesis. He wants to make his thesis more acceptable, and he defends it in the case of a very classical example. He enunciates the very classical example, Hesperus is phosphorus. Hesperus is equal to phosphorus. Hesperus is a name that has been given to a planet, evening star. Okay, and phosphorus is the name of the morning star. So these both these names refer to the planet Venus. So this is an identity statement, Hesperus is equal to phosphorus. Now it might seem that Hesperus is not phosphorus. We can imagine such a situation where Hesperus is not equal to phosphorus. Okay, Hesperus and phosphorus are not one and the same planet, Venus. We can imagine such a counterfactual situation where one of these names, Hesperus and phosphorus, refer to different planets. Hesperus refers to a different planet, and phosphorus also denotes another planet. We can imagine such a situation. So in that case, Hesperus is not phosphorus. But But as a matter of fact, the identity statement Hesperus is phosphorus is a necessarily true statement. Hesperus is a rigid designator, phosphorus is also a rigid designator because it refers to the same object in all the possible worlds. But the counterfactual situation about which I just now talked, that we can imagine such a counterfactual situation where we might have named two different planets with the names Hesperus and Phosphorus. But what Kripke would say in response to this counterfactual situation, that this is not actually the counterfactual situation that he intended to say by the phrase possible world. So it is a misunderstanding of Kripkean sense of possible world. Okay, because here the word Hesperus has been used to name a different planet other than Venus. Okay, so we are not talking about the planet Venus. We are deviating from the object in question and we are giving the name Hesperus to another planet. Okay, so it is not the exact counterfactual situation. Counterfactual situation must consist, must involve the object in question. Like it should talk about the object in question. It should center around the object in discussion, individual in discussion. So it is not saying that. Rather, deviating from the planet Venus, it is just talking about that some planet has been given the name, one of the names Hesperus or Phosphorus. So Hesperus must not be Phosphorus, simply. That is why it is not a necessarily true statement. But Kripke says no, it is not the right sense of understanding possible world, the notion of possible world, because here yes, so we are not using these names Hesperus and Phosphorus to refer to the planet Venus. Rather, we are using it to name different objects other than Venus. Okay, actually no, Hesperus is phosphorus is a necessarily true statement because Hesperus itself is phosphorus. Alright, but very carefully you need to observe, one can interpret it differently. The object named Hesperus is equal to the object named Phosphorus. Is not a necessarily true statement. Forget about everything. Just let's talk about Hesperus is equal to Phosphorus. By now it is pretty clear that it is a necessary statement because Hesperus is itself Phosphorus. Okay, it refers to one and the same individual in across all the possible worlds. All right, but if someone construes it, interprets it in that way, like the object named Hesperus is equal to the object named Phosphorus, in that case, interestingly, it will not be a necessarily true statement. If you observe it carefully, you will get the answer. Why? Because both the co-referential terms, like the object named Hesperus, is not a rigid designator. Neither it is rigid designator, nor is the object named Phosphorus a rigid designator. So neither co-referential terms are rigid designators. Why? Because listen very carefully, that the object named Hesperus, or forget about this example, say the person named Smita. My name is Smita and my pet name is Reena. Okay, so Smita is equal to Reena. This is a necessarily true statement. Why? Smita refers to the same individual, me, that is me, across all the possible situations, whatever happens. whatever happens, whether I am in the field of philosophy, whether I am pursuing medical profession, whether I am doing another job. So in every possible counterfactual situation, I will remain Smita. The person Smita will remain Smita in all, irrespective of all counterfactual situations. Okay, and my pet name, like Reena, is also since it also designates the same individual, me, across all the possible situations, like I mentioned, is also a rigid designator. That's why the identity statement Smita is equal to Reena is a rigid designator. Now if I say the person named Smita is equal to the person named Reena, this is not a necessarily true statement. Why? Because the person named Smita is a non-rigid designator, because this may refer to different individuals across different possible worlds. There can be many other persons. We can imagine lots of counterfactual situations where many persons have been named Smita, also have been named Reena. Okay, so it is not simply a rigid designator. If you remember, Kripke's thesis is that identity statement that involves non-rigid designator is not a necessarily true statement. It is contingent, because you, in common sense, if you say that the person named Smita is equal to the person named Reena, so there could be various counterfactual situations where many person can have Smita. In your school also you may come across lots of girls have the name Smita or Reena. Okay, so the names, the proper names, the rigid designator, please excuse me, the designator, the person named Smita, the person named Reena. Okay, this kind of designators, they designate different individuals. Okay. But if I say Smita is equal to Reena, why is it then rigid designator? Why are these proper names rigid designator? Because it refers to the same individual across different possible worlds. So are you getting confused? The person named Smita, why it is not rigid designator? Because the person named Smita can be many person. Now when I am talking about only Smita, whatever is in my mind is that the same individual, okay, across all the possible worlds. That's what make the statement Smita is equal to Reena is a necessarily true statement. Okay, so one cannot know, now I am coming to another point, that one cannot know that Hesperus is equal to phosphorus a priori. Earlier philosophers thought that whatever is necessarily true must be known a priori. This is a misconceived notion. Okay, they conflated two different notions, epistemic and metaphysical. Necessarily true statement, necessity, the idea of necessity is refers to metaphysical notion. It's a metaphysical notion. And a prioricity is an epistemic notion. So whatever is necessarily true can be either a priori, can be known a priori, as well as can also be known a posteriori. Like water is equal to H2O, or Hesperus is phosphorus. Can you tell me that it is known a priori? No, it's a misconceived notion, a conflation between a prioricity and necessity. So as we earlier discussed, it is a result of empirical discovery, scientific discovery. After a huge scientific discovery, observation and scientific discovery, we come to the conclusion that Hesperus is phosphorus. So it is known a posteriori. So the earlier preconceived notion, the supposition that whatever is necessarily true must be a priori, has been demolished. So necessary true can be known a posteriori as well. Necessary true can be known a priori, at the same time it can be known a posteriori. And whatever is known a posteriori is not the case that it will be always contingent. It can be necessary, like water is equal to H2O. It's a necessary true and it's a posteriori, and we come to know this after scientific investigation. Alright. So yes, I'm going to read out something for you. The appearance that is only contingently true, that Hesperus is phosphorus, is due to the Hesperus is phosphorus. Apparently it seems that it is a contingently true statement, but it is not the case. It is due to a conflation of epistemic with metaphysical possibility. It's Kripke's in Kripke's words, I quote, that I may be in a position where it is possible, for all I know, that Hesperus is not phosphorus. That is, I may not realize that the object named Hesperus is identical to the object named phosphorus. That's because the evidence in the two cases can be quantitatively indistinguishable. So now I am going to conclude the topic. To sum up, I would say that necessary statements that involves rigid as well as non-rigid designators are always contingently true, not necessarily true. Secondly, identity statement that involves only rigid designators, where the two co-referential terms, both co-referential terms are rigid designators, must always be necessarily true. So this is the crux of Kripke's understanding of identity statements. Let me wind up here. I shall come up with the topic natural kind terms. This is also a pertinent topic of Kripke's theory of proper name.